Now, today's weekly podcast, we're kind of just going through 3 topics that I'm very excited to head off. And one of them stemming from the new types of videos I've been trying to make, which you might have seen on anywhere you get your social media feed, TikTok, your Instagram, YouTube Shorts. It's more just like the multi-angle types of videos I'm trying to make, the real types of content for my breakdowns. And the first one I did was actually about Dennis Rodman versus Draymond Green. I didn't quite hint off who I would take in the video itself and in the caption, which I'm sure most of you, if you guys even saw the video, wouldn't have even have read it. But I did state how I am a bigger fan of Draymond Green in this argument. And so basically with the new format in the video, I just want to quickly break down though why I would take Draymond Green, because I actually think this debate is ultra close. And on the poll that I put down in the video, I think it was 51 to 49% leaning towards Draymond Green. Like, it was neck and neck. And we're legit splitting hairs here when it comes, for my argument too. Either way, honestly, last time I did my all-time rankings, I haven't updated them for about a year, but would have had Dennis Rodman for sure above him. But with just viewing things a little bit differently, I kind of would probably take Draymond as of right now. And I just wanted to kind of list out my reasons why. Because again, a very ultra close debate. These are 2 guys of basically the same archetype, just in different eras of NBA basketball. Same personalities even, if you want, for their eras too. And so just with this debate as well, the inspiration for the video, I saw an argument between Brandon Jennings and I think it was Kenyon Martin and one of the other guys on Gil's Arena. And they were just arguing in a pretty casual manner about who they preferred, Draymond Green or Dennis Rodman, all time, and who had just the greater career, the greater impact on the league. And I think Brandon Jennings was defending Draymond Green. I think he had Nick Young by his side as well. But then the older guys were more respectful of what Dennis Rodman did in his career. But specifically speaking though, this is totally subjective. It's more subjective to also which era you value more, but also just what you value in general as a basketball player. For me, I just think after that 4th title in Golden State, I think as a complete staple in the actual system for 4 titles spanning nearly 8 years straight, between their 4 titles or whatever it was, that's why I probably lean towards Draymond Green. I just think that longevity of greatness to a franchise is something that gives him a bit more lenience in this debate, but also just the gap for them as players. It is extremely close and it is split by the smallest of hairs. And these are 2 guys that I probably scale around the 65 to 70th players of all time if you did a consensus view. But I just think when you go for the talent argument here, I just think Draymond Green actually clears that aspect pretty effortlessly. Now, obviously Dennis Rodman, he had the athletic advantage in this debate, but he had nothing to what Draymond Green could do in terms of the skill-wise and just the cognitive aspects as well on the offensive side of the ball. So obviously skill will always improve era to era or completely. And Draymond Green, by any standard, might not be considered a skilled basketball player, but when you consider what he can do on the floor with the cognitive speed, as well as also the skills with the passing, with the screening, angling, and then also just the basic shot making that he could do in his prime years too, the ball handling perks that you get from him as your power forward center, that's skill. And that's where I find the gap between these 2 guys. Whether or not you say Rodman was better defensively or not, that's up to you. I just think the gap in their offensive value, regardless of what era, I just think that's no debate here. Draymond, we're talking about literally one of the greatest facilitating forwards the game has ever seen. And we're talking about elite bullet passing. We're talking about decision-making hyper speed. We're talking about floor general communication at the highest level. So about continuous screening and just movement value continuously. Maybe the GOAT of 4-on-3 level reads coming out of pick and roll, coming off his 1A blitzes, that the gravity that Steph and Clay could grab that attention as well in pick and roll. So maybe the greatest in terms of capitalizing on those simple advantages in those prime Warriors years as well when they were winning those titles, even the years before KD got there as well. So just everything he does facilitating the floor makes him one of the greatest in that aspect, regardless of position as well. You can compare him to the greatest point guards of all time in terms of facilitating offense on the floor. This guy was effortless and he always wreaked value at every single second on any offensive possession. And that's what makes Draymond Green extremely special. And in his prime as well, this is also another differentiator between the 2. But we're talking about a legitimate spacing threat. someone who was producing at a pretty exceptional level, and he was like literally one of the best two-way anchors in the NBA. And obviously more of a modern day offensive anchor with how he used to control stuff from the top of the key, like your Sabonis's might usually do. And I say anchor in this case because he completely coordinated the offense with Steph, and he stabilized their decision-making process, which, either way you look at it, for a championship level team, just that all-time transcendent offense that he was able to coordinate, that is absolutely remarkable. And in 2016 as well, we're talking about a guy that averaged 14 points, 10 rebounds, 7 assists, 3 stocks on 55% effective field goal percentage in 2016, all right? And that included him splashing in 39 of his threes on over 3 attempts a game in 2016. This isn't 2025 standards. This is 2016. There is a gap between what we were expecting from your bigs at that point in time as well. We're talking about a guy in 2016, again, finished 7th in MVP voting, 2nd in the Defensive Player of the Year race, All Defensive First Team, and All NBA Second Team. And this is all whilst contributing to a 73-9 regular season team who lost in Game 7 of the NBA Finals. And they lost by an absolute hair, 4 points. Like, just that peak individual season as well. Like, obviously, greatness, a lot of it's to do with longevity and how much you actually did in your career. But when we are talking about also your peak as well, I think Draymond takes the cake here. And like, I don't think you ever find like a peak individual season like Draymond's 2016 year, or even if you want to take 2017, because they actually won the title that year as well. You can argue he was just as impactful as just KD came to the team as well. Like, you just don't find that anywhere in Rodman's career. And like, we're talking about legitimately the second most impactful and most valuable player on a 73-win regular season team in a complete dynasty of the 21st century. Like, what he did can't go understated. Like, people look at the stats, oh, he's averaging 8, 8, and 8. He's not doing anything. He's averaging 8, 7, and 6. He's not doing anything special. That's regardless. Like, you got to watch what this guy does on the floor every single night, which is super impactful. And then the next point, like, you talk about defense. But to me, like, I genuinely think these guys are pretty close. Because obviously, yes, you can argue Dennis was more talented defensively in terms of just being that defensive archetype and that pest. But Draymond has clearly been arguably the clear best defender of this generation alone when you go through a team success standpoint, but then also an individual dominance and then a sustained, consistent longevity standpoint as well. All those 3 markers he's ticked off in this generation to be the GOAT defender. We're talking about a guy with 6 top 5 DPOY finishes and 9 all-defensive selections with a Defensive Player of the Year to go along with it. And this is obviously all resume-based as well. But like, when we actually get into like defensive talent as well, when we actually get into it as well, you'll see that the gap isn't that big. Draymond, just one of the weirdest guys. He just has some knack for literally blowing up and making offensive actions so much harder to execute in the half court because he literally shuts off team-wide advantages at such an obscene level. Like, he shuts off rolling impact as an exceptional help side timing-based guy. You know, he's a guy that shuts off post value because he can, like, with his ability to actually absorb strength, absorb power, cover outlet passing lanes out of the post, maintain disciplined vertical contesting structure as well. You know, he's got enough mobility as well to be able to match and absorb the blows that, you know, post bigs can throw in terms of their spins and drop steps. You know, he can actually meet them to spots in the post because of the mobility and the foot speed advantages he naturally has there because he is undersized. He's someone that provides like insane mobility, but also just the insane timing and decision making as a drop coverage big. Someone that, you know, against pull up jump shooters can bait the most inefficient looks. Everything's based on efficiency on the offensive end, but that totally matches everything he does defensively, giving up what he thinks is the least valuable shot for the opposing team continually. He's a guy that wipes off cutters, switches any ball screen if it doesn't jeopardize his guards. You know, one of the best like blitzing, like base blitzers that you'll get in the NBA from your big man position. Someone who's just got, like, when he's actually blitzing you in terms of just those incoming hands, the constant lateral pitter-patter activity as well for his position. You just don't find that across the league. And like, quite literally, like, as a help side defender too, like in the modern NBA, this guy's legit achieved the highest of heights in defensive value. And so, like, when you talk about the mobility, again, I'm going to keep talking about the mobility, but he was playing the power forward position at like 6'5", 6'6". So you're going to have those advantages, and they were so valuable in a league that is so spaced out. Your ability to actually get to different spots in faster speeds is so valuable in today's era. And that's why those mobility advantages blended with the most perfected anticipation and the most perfected, like, literal just timing of any of his contests, any of his step-ups, any of his gap coverages. That's why he is, at least to me, the most valuable defensive anchor of the decade. And I don't think the gap between value between Dennis and Draymond is that big. Talent is a different perspective, because obviously Dennis Rodman's a freak athlete and just got, maybe even like a bit like a greater motor than Draymond Green. But in terms of the value to his era, Draymond Green matches Dennis Rodman, if not easily surpasses it. It's a lot harder to be a defensive anchor in Dennis's or Draymond's specific archetype in the 2020s, 2010s, than it was in the 90s, where it's mostly just like stopping post-centric basketball. And so, like, I'm not having any dig, because what Dennis did in his time was just as valuable as what Draymond could do in this time. I just think it's a little bit harder to do what Draymond did for his defensive career. And so, just racking off that, I know I just went through a massive loop, but that talent, so by talent-wise, I just don't see the argument between these two guys when we are talking about what they could do on the floor as basketball players. And obviously, Rodman's case, so, I'm not just going to overpass everything he did, but his case is pretty special in this one. There's a reason it's so close. The resume honestly might stack up a bit more. He's got the extra championship as well. But when you're talking about just simply being, again, the Draymond Green of his era, when you just talk about the same types of principles of value that he brought to the game at a lower usage rate, different things he had to focus on to provide value on the margins, that's why they are so similar. And the thing is, though, I give Draymond his props with talent-wise, because the ball handling, the passing, the facilitation, the initiation skill set. But the thing is, ball handling at the power forward position was just never valued in Dennis Rodman's time anywhere near the level it was right now. And just that same elite passing value and the continuous offensive involvement, that just wasn't expected, from the teams and roles that he played for, from especially Detroit and Chicago, where he did get the ultimate success. And that's why, obviously, for Dennis, leaving those extra duties, he was a capable passer, but leaving those duties to better and more suited players is simply why Rodman probably won more titles than Draymond has in his career as well. Also, for the fact that he's played for two different dynasty teams as well. Draymond's stuck with the same dynasty. But Dennis did match Draymond's individual value for his time, really, for the most part, by excelling in another facet. So you drop the offensive qualities and you add in the other facet, the other trait that made Dennis Rodman just so unbelievable. And obviously, that facet, and he's probably the GOAT of it, that's obviously rebounding. Now, Dennis in his career, 7 rebounding titles. 7. Nearly a decade. This dude finished his last 10 years in the NBA averaging 16 rebounds a game. That's for an entire decade of NBA basketball towards the end of his career. And in the 90s as well, only one other player in that whole decade ever hit the glorious 15 rebounds a game mark for an entire season. And if you have any guesses of who that was, I'd be a little bit surprised if you get it on first thought as well. It's not Dikembe, it's not Hakeem, it's not David Robinson, it's Kevin Willis. And he did it once in 1992. He averaged just basically 15 rebounds a game. But Dennis in the 90s did that 6 different times. And just dominance in that specific trait at a time where it was valued more than ever. And so for the, again, relative to their eras, what Dennis brought to the game, along with the defensive versatility, also just the mind games, the constant pesky hand activity, the continuous battling for positioning and denying positioning out of the post, the freakish low post motor that you'll never find from any other player in NBA history. That's why Dennis's literal value and impact was very comparable to peak Draymond Green. I probably take, though, that peak version of Draymond. But over their careers, they provided very similar values overall. And that's why for the differentiator, it is the peak for me. Draymond's peak years, if you want to say it was between 2015 to 2017, that 3-year span to me was just more impressive as an individual talent than anything that Dennis did for any concentrated period of time. And I say that with the conclusion as well that like Draymond at his peak was actually in discussions as a top 10 player in the world. In that 2016 to 2017 range, if you go through rankings, just basic rankings, what maybe even ESPN did, like he was in truly undeniable superstar impact conversations. I've seen him get ranked 9th, 10th in the world back when you go look back at like what people perceived back then. And to be honest, you'd find it hard finding any year in Rodman's career where he did match that level of greatness as a player. And so that's why my main argument here, like because the resumes are very, very similar in weight, like especially when you consider like the offensive impact numbers that Draymond was churning out compared to, Dennis adding up the rebounds, it's very, very similar. But these are also the greatest role-playing guys in the history of the league, if you can even call them that. And so these are two guys that both won basically like half a decade of NBA championships each. 5 for Dennis, 4 for Draymond. But these are guys who basically provided the same value in the same positions in different eras for separate championship level squads. And for me though, just the 14 years that Draymond Green has been able to be, like the amount of value the Warriors have gotten over 14 years of Draymond's career, I just don't think Rodman, for the fact that he never gave that to any one franchise as well, I just think Draymond's legacy has surpassed Rodman's with the slightest edge. Now we're done with that argument. That took a fair bit of time. But also, I want to hear what you guys think about that. Like, obviously, it's extremely close. Like, Dennis also has an incredible reputation as well as being a pest, the antics as well. Very similar to what Draymond's done in this era as well, but it just depends on what you overall value. A lot of people love the rebounding statistics and also just the rebounding impact. And then when you also consider his size as well in the game, either way you look at it, like I could very much pivot and make a huge argument as to why I think Dennis deserves that all-time slot above Draymond, but this is just the way that I view it now. Maybe it's recency bias because I'm still watching Draymond. I've watched Draymond for my life. I wasn't alive for Dennis Rodman's peak years, as you can probably tell. But just off what I have watched and what I know about the NBA in different eras, I'm going to take Draymond Green in that debate.